We are now broadcasting.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to give it a couple minutes for everyone to enter the room.
How many do we have registered for tonight, Adam?
We had a little over 100, 110 or so.
Oh, that's great. So as you guys are popping on, we're excited to talk to you tonight, and we'd love to hear where you're from and kind of what your goals are. So if you can click on the Q&A box and just type in where you're viewing this presentation from, we'd love to know where you're at, and that'll help us kind of customize things to your needs a little bit and let us know some of the things you're excited to talk about.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we'll have a few more people that will be joining us, but I think we can go ahead and get started. Tonight's presentation gets a little bit more technical than the previous presentations, but again, some of you have more experience than others. I'm sure in real estate, some of you have a lot of experience, and some of you, this may be new, some of these topics. And so we're going to try to cover what we feel like are the most important aspects that you need to know to get a basic grasp of these topics. We are not attorneys, we're not CPAs, and so you're definitely on to, and we're not lenders. So on these topics, you want to get with your attorney or CPA professionals to have these discussions. We're just going to give you a broad overview. This is the introduction, and again, it's just an introduction to financing, 1031 exchanges, which are like-kind exchanges, and self-directed IRAs. Excellent. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about the presenters tonight. I'll introduce Jared Garfield. Actually has been in the real estate industry for almost a couple of decades. And he is not just a real estate investor himself, but he's also a real estate coach, one of the top real estate investment acquisition and property trainers in the US. He's been acquiring properties in several states, been training for years. He's helped analyze and acquire thousands of properties within US, thousands of single family homes, also with multifamily properties. Jared's got a lot of experience, been in the industry a long time. He actually used to be a coach for Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad. He used to train a lot of the Rich Dad coaches as well. He's got a number of different certifications in the industry. He's worked with Flip This House and Flipping Vegas, had his own radio show. It was a Fox News radio show in Georgia or Atlanta at the time. So Jared's comes with a wealth of experience and knowledge.
Well, thanks, Adam. It's great to be with you tonight. I appreciate the warm introduction, and that's kind of you to say. I've known Adam since he was a senior in high school. We've been best friends for, gosh, probably 25 years now.
Long time, yeah.
And I started out kind of mentoring him a little bit because I'm a little bit older than he is and got into real estate just before he did. But in a lot of ways, he's passed me up in several areas. He's really advanced his knowledge, particularly recently with a couple years back, getting his CCIM designation, which if you're familiar with that, that's the Certified Commercial Investment Member. That's a prestigious designation that's awarded to people who have spent a great deal of time in continuing education on commercial topics. So Adam's done a lot with apartment complexes, subdivision development. He's managed hedge funds and worked with different hedge funds. He and I sold about $70 million in real estate to some of the hedge funds that were buying in Atlanta a few years back. And he and I have been partnered for a lot of years, but he's got his certified investor agent specialist, his broker price opinion resource, as well as his certified foreign investor specialist, as well as a strong background in financial planning, working with some of the most prestigious financial planning firms in the country. And so Adam's just a great resource, and he has a lot of knowledge. He's been doing real estate a long time. In fact, I think he's third generation in real estate.
Yeah. Grew up in it. I guess I started when I was 8. working around apartments. So it's been a long time, but excited about it. Jared, glad to be on another webinar for you. I know we don't get to collaborate as much anymore these days. Everybody's so busy, so I'm glad to get to do this webinar together. So let's dive right into it. All right, table of contents. We're going to be talking about financing, 1031 exchanges, and self-directed IRAs.
Part of the reason we want to talk about these things tonight is for a lot of people, you get into real estate investing and you start to think, okay, I've spent my down payment money, what's next? And what we want you to understand tonight is that there's a lot of different things you can do to expand your arsenal and continue to invest. And so we'll start out by talking about first the different types of loans. And also we want to talk a little bit about how interest rates can affect your investments. So when we get into different types of loans, first thing is conventional loans. And conventional loans typically are characterized by, that's what a lot of investors are going to use when they're beginning. Then you also have portfolio loans. And this is for experienced investors that typically already have a lot of assets. And we'll talk about that. But you can also use portfolio loans for acquisition once you've got past the 10 loans that most Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed loans will allow you to have, which is usually your one primary residence plus 9 more. Per person in the household. And then we're going to also touch upon FHA and VA loans and where those are appropriate for people as they begin. So there'll be some advanced strategies we'll talk about tonight, and there'll also be a lot of good stuff for beginners. So conventional financing is ideal for new investors. It's typically really good for people that have 10 properties or less. The thing that's good about conventional financing is sometimes the rates are a little bit lower. Usually you're putting a little bit more down than you were with FHA or with VA. And so because you're, as an investor, if you're putting down 20 or 25%, sometimes you'll have a little bit lower interest rate. Conventional financing is easy to obtain. Typically, this would be going to a traditional local bank a lot of the times, or a mortgage broker. It's not as much of an issue when it comes to property condition. When you're buying properties, particularly if you were not going the turnkey route for some reason, the property condition isn't as much of an issue as if you're going through an FHA or a VA inspection, because the VA or the FHA appraisers, which will come do inspections on the properties, are going to hold the property to a higher standard, and they're going to require more repairs, which in a seller's market, that can be a little bit difficult to get a seller that's willing to cooperate with that many contingencies. And so that's one advantage of conventional financing is the loans are less paperwork typically, a little bit lower interest rate, and in a competitive seller's market, you don't have as many contingencies that the seller has to satisfy. In a really hot competitive market, a lot of sellers in multiple offer situations just won't even consider FHA or VA loans because they don't want to jump through all the hoops. As far as features go, as we mentioned a minute ago, they're usually limited to 10 loans per individual, and they're generally on a 30-year fixed rate or a 15-year fixed rate typically. The next thing is portfolio financing, and I'll let Adam give a little bit more commentary on this as well as he may want to jump in. Portfolio financing is really good for advanced investors. If you've already bought through Real Wealth Network maybe 10 or 15 properties and you've had them for 5 or 6 or 10 years, and you've built up some really good equity through principal pay down and also through appreciation, a lot of times you can potentially, if you already have 10 loans, you might go ahead and say, you know what, I really want to get aggressive and I have a lot more equity now. And so one thing you might do is do a portfolio loan where you can do a cash out refinance on those 10 homes. That would be one option to harvest the equity out. And typically they're going to want you to keep 20% in, but if you're at 30 or 40%, you could potentially pull some money out. But the second thing with portfolio financing might be that you could go ahead and refinance it into one loan in a commercial loan. And so this portfolio loan would be a commercial loan where you could roll all of those properties possibly into one commercial loan. And right now those rates are not that much different than conventional rates. You might pay a point higher, but it might allow you to then take once you knock those out, you could then go get 10 new loans at today's low rates. And so that's a nice thing. Adam, do you want to add some commentary there?
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. I appreciate that. Honestly, this is probably the type of financing that we use the most and see the most. And the primary reason is because you can do more than 10 units, right? And so the interest rates are a little bit higher. The primary benefits that we get from this type of financing, this is really private financing. And because you're not, the banks, it's very difficult sometimes to do those traditional commercial type portfolio loans, but we see a lot of financing like this, a lot of lenders that'll do portfolio loans like this. And again, it's private financing. So a lot of what we see today is private financing. And Jared, and as you know, not just on portfolios, but on individual homes. So, and you typically may end up paying a point or two more on the interest rate, but there's a lot more flexibility. And for us that are full-time real estate investors, speed is important, the ability to get in there, get deals done, not have to worry about caps and a lot of red tape. And it typically works out well. So we use private financing and portfolio financing for almost all of our transactions. It allows us to scale and do whatever kind of volume that we're looking for, and costs us a little bit more in interest, but it from an operational standpoint, we see it as a lot more advantageous.
And when we talk about portfolio loans, there's really two types here. One is they're actually taking your portfolio and they're giving you a loan based on your portfolio of properties. The second thing is that sometimes some of these private lenders, as Adam alluded to, is they're actually portfolioing your loans, which means that they're going to keep your loans in their portfolio. They're not selling it off to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And so because they're not selling it off, they do charge a little higher interest rate because they don't make the profit off of selling the loan, but they're actually going to keep it in-house. And so sometimes they are less stringent upon the actual borrower. In fact, they may not even take your personal income and your personal credit so much into consideration in doing the loan. It's more based upon the assets that you actually have.
That's right. Another good point, Jared. It's not as much about underwriting the borrower as it is about underwriting the asset.
Great. Well, this is a really great feature. I love this this strategy, because a lot of people just don't realize, they've bought enough properties, but if they're a doctor or an engineer or a computer programmer or something like that, maybe you work in Silicon Valley and stuff like that for Apple or something, you're an expert at what you're an expert at. And so you don't always realize as you build a large portfolio is that there are options to allow you to continue. If you've had really good success with your real estate and you want to buy more, this is a great strategy to be able to continue to do that. So FHA and VA financing, this is one that we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on, but I do want to cover it here because this is great when you're first getting started out here. It's not that you have to be young and single. The slide says, hey, it's for folks that are young or single. The main thing is if you are young, you might not have built up a lot of down payment money yet. Or perhaps if you don't have a lot of kids, you might be willing to move into a duplex or a fourplex. This is a great way to start out because if you're willing to do that at the very beginning, imagine being able to live in one of 4 units and letting the other 3 units cover all of your expenses on the property, and you're basically living for free. If you've got a good job, you could just stack away the cash. When I worked with Robert Kiyosaki, he always talked about that your primary residence really is not typically an asset. It's a doodad, meaning that an asset puts money in your pockets, a liability takes money out of your pockets, and a doodad could do either one depending on what happens. If you lose your job, then all of a sudden your house, which you thought was an asset, becomes a liability. Well, if you use FHA or VA financing, this is only for primary residences that you live in, okay? But this allows you to have an investment component because you could move into a duplex or a fourplex, live for free, stack away the cash, and do really well. And if it's an FHA loan, then of course you could always move out, keep that loan in place, and keep it as a rental property. If it's a VA, you could do the same, but it would limit your ability to get another VA loan with 0 down. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. But it's a great strategy to be able to save money and get ahead quickly, particularly when you're young. We think this is a great opportunity, and you can always refinance out and rent those units that are occupied there.
Jared, I also want to mention that we don't have in this slide are USDA loans that are very specific to rural areas. There are certain geographic areas around the suburbs or outside of, in the suburbs of cities that are rural, and they qualify for USDA loans, which are also 100% financing, just like these types of loans. I know we didn't put that in the slide, but it's just want to note that does exist if it's a more rural area.
No, that's a really good point, Adam. That's a great way to be able to strengthen your portfolio and keep more of your down payment funds available for other properties. So if I were starting out as a brand new investor today, I would go in with FHA or VA to get my first property, live in it for probably 2 years, and then I might go ahead and move out and keep it as a rental property, because that way I can really save my down payment money for other things. And
you know, Jerry, you hit on a really good point. I just want to emphasize this. So we do encourage many people who haven't bought a home before or are first-time home buyers to get in and buy a house, like you said, that something, you know, we encourage home ownership because you can build up equity. But like Jared said, sometimes it can be an asset, sometimes it can be a liability. We encourage people to get their first home to get a modest home, because with a modest home, instead of selling the home when it's time to move, your first 2 or 3 moves, if you get a smaller home or something a little bit more modest, you can rent it when you leave, go buy another one, rent that one. And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you've got a small portfolio of homes that are building up equity, and you have tenants paying down, you know, that loan balance for you. So that's one way to increase your net worth very early on if you know, are a first time or a new home buyer. So we encourage people not, as they're starting off, don't go for the biggest, nicest house. Again, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want to learn how to retire early, those are some of the tips and tricks that you can do to build a net worth early on and the cash flow early on.
And if I had a VA ability to get a VA loan, Adam, I would consider moving every 2 to 5 years, because literally I could keep buying properties with no down payment money, and just as long as I can refinance out of that VA loan to a more traditional product, I can buy more properties with no down payment.
That's right.
All right. So now I want to talk a little about the effects of interest rates here. Adam's really, really good with the numbers and analyzing, you know, the numbers on this. So Adam, why don't you talk a little bit about the difference that leverage makes, and how if you have...
Yes, no, absolutely. So let's talk about it this way. First of all, consider we're privileged and blessed in the United States that we have leverage. There's a lot of other countries that they don't use leverage and can't get loans. There are 3 types of leverage. There's positive leverage, which is what most people consider leverage. For investment properties, there's negative leverage and neutral leverage. And the way it works is if you're buying a property and the cap rate is 5% and your interest rate is also 5%, that is a neutral leverage. Okay. So let's say if you're getting a loan and you're putting 25% down, the percentage that you're putting down is purchasing a house at that 5% cap rate. Now, if you're paying 6% interest, that's called negative leverage. So the other 75% of the dollars that it took to purchase that property, you borrowed that money and you're paying more interest than you're getting in cash flow. That's negative leverage. Most people try to avoid negative leverage.
That's really risky unless you're in a real boom market that's just absolutely exploding. You got to be really careful with negative leverage.
Jared, that's a good point. It's very popular in areas like California, DC, and certain areas in the Northeast where appreciation is really high. I know it's more popular in California than a lot of places because the property was appreciating so much they really didn't care about the negative leverage they had. But the part that's really powerful, and this is the part that we love so much, and this is why people typically look for a cash-on-cash return when they're looking at cash flowing or rental properties, is because of positive leverage, which means if your cap rate's 5%, you want to be paying 3 or 4% on an interest rate. That means that the 25% you put down, you're getting a 5% return, and you're also getting the spread on the other 75% of the property, all that amount that you borrowed money for, that you got leveraged, you're getting that spread between that 3 and 4% interest on that money and the 5% that you're actually cash flowing. And that's why you often see cash on cash returns that are much higher than a cap rate because they take into consideration the leveraged cash flow that you're bringing in as well. And so that's the main difference. But if you look at this example, like Jared talked about, an interest rate of 5% on, so this example on a VA loan, and again, interest rates right now on VA loans and FHA loans, I think are 2.82% on a VA, and I think it's like 2.9% on FHA. FHA is a little bit higher. These are just examples, but ultimately you can see if you're paying a 5% interest rate, if you're a $100,000 home that brings in $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. You put 25% down. You're paying a 5% interest rate, but because your cap rate's much higher than that, you're getting a 16% leveraged return, and a cash on cash return is just leverage. So if you were buying a property with cash and we're not using leverage, your cap rate and your cash on cash would be exactly the same thing. Again, if you look at the interest rate, 6% on FHA, cash on cash return, you're paying a point more, so it drops at 2 points just almost on your cash on cash return. So if you look at that, actually a little bit over that. So if you look at it, every point that you pay in interest affects your return. Every point that you get on that cash flow and that cap rate affects your return. And that was the main thing that we wanted to illustrate with this.
And that means, Adam, I mean, if you look at this, the spread's about 2.2%, so just off of 1 point on interest rate.
Yeah.
So that means if I got something at 3%, that's 2 points lower. That means I'm at like 4.4% higher return just by today's interest environment, providing me a better return on my investment.
That's right. That means your cash on cash is going to go up significantly.
Great. All right, let's see what we have next on this next slide. So 1031 exchange is the next topic we want to talk about. 1031 exchange is a great way to be able to roll equity from one property into another property of equal or greater value, and often into more than one property of equal or greater value, thus getting more cash flow potentially, and the ability to have potentially more appreciation while also diversifying your portfolio. So let's take a dive into this. First thing is obviously there's tax advantages. You're deferring your capital gains. This means that when they want to recapture the depreciation that you've been taking, the big tax advantages you've been getting, instead of the government taxing you for it when you sell the property, wanting to recapture the depreciation they've allowed you to take, this allows you to take that money that the government has the right to reclaim and take from you and roll it into more properties, so you can potentially purchase more properties as more capital for you to be able to invest with. And this allows you to be able to really keep your focus on growing your portfolio without having to incur the tax liability now. And you can potentially push it off indefinitely. Now, I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving you tax advice, but just from an educational standpoint, if you continue to roll the properties forward again and again and again, you can put it off for a very long time because the government wants you to continue to grow your real estate portfolio. They've written the tax code such that they favor real estate investment. They want you to provide jobs and to provide affordable housing. So this is a great way to leverage, and it just allows you to buy more valuable properties. One of the things I like about exchanges is you can go from C+ assets to B, and then eventually to A, and then eventually, if you wanted to, you could end up owning commercial real estate and going into things like apartment buildings through 1031 exchange. So there's a lot of great advantages there.
And to your point, Jared, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll continue rolling it over. And again, when you talk about indefinitely, and we're not CPAs, so you can ask them about this, that there is, what people will do is they'll keep it rolling it over forever. And then when they pass away and that asset goes on to their heirs, there's a stepped up basis. So the new capital gains basis becomes the value of the property at the time that you passed it on to your heirs. And so people often do that strategy, and some people just do it for a short period of time until they build up their assets to the point where they feel comfortable going ahead and paying the taxes.
I remember,
so that's something to consider.
Adam, you remember when we did the bus tour maybe 10 years ago with the guys from Flip This House, Peter Pasternak and Brian Tro.
I remember that, yeah.
We did a presentation called, I took it from my Rich Dad days. It was 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. You know, the old Monopoly analogy. That's a good way to think about 1031 exchanges. It's like going from 4 greenhouses in Monopoly to one red hotel. You replace those 4 green houses with a red hotel, and your income goes up significantly. That's a nice way to think about the 1031 exchange. It's kind of like playing Monopoly. There's 4 different types of 1031 exchange. Adam, why don't you cover the first 2, and then we'll talk a little bit about the other 2.
Absolutely. So there's a simultaneous exchange, which occurs when the replacement property, or excuse me, when the replacement or relinquished property closes on the same day. And again, we're not going to try not to get too technical
just
here.
means the one you sold, but it just makes us sound smart to be able to say it.
That's right. And so again, these are the most common ones you exchange it on the same day, and then also exchanging it like, actually the most common is a delayed exchange, which occurs when the exchanger relinquishes the original property, which is the property that you sold, before you require a replacement property. And there's a time frame that you have to abide by. So when the delayed exchange is when you sell your property, you're going to have a period of time in which you have to identify a new property, and then a period of time in which you have to go ahead and close and exchange that money into the new property without touching it. You can't, when you sell your property, you can't put the money in your bank account. It has to stay with an intermediary during that whole period of time.
A reverse exchange is not done real often, but that would be if you found a property in advance that you wanted to buy and you went through the exchange accommodation title holder. Tell me that doesn't sound like a mouthful.
Right.
So basically, before you exchange the property that you currently own, you find the property in advance, you get together with your 1031 exchange intermediary and set it up. You have to follow rules to make sure you do it right. You don't want to blow up your exchange, because then the recapture of the depreciation can happen and you can be taxed and have penalties. But so if you're doing a reverse exchange, you're going to be real careful on making sure you identify it and do it right. The last one, of course, is a construction or an improvement exchange, which would allow you to buy a property that maybe allowed you to get some equity, where you could actually make improvements to the property and let the renovation be done after you purchased it, and have the renovation monies that are taken from your exchange go towards the property being of equal or greater value, and possibly get some equity on the backside. There are some downsides because they do charge fees every time an inspection is done at the property, and sometimes that can be a little bit more expensive, but those are the 4 types of 1031 exchange.
Now the time period. That's what we talked about earlier. There's a timeline. You have to identify a property. So from day one, when you sell your existing property, you have 45 days to exchange the property or to identify replacement properties. And you can identify multiple properties. There are rules around this. So again, you need to talk to your CPA or talk to your exchange intermediary. And then the exchange must be concluded or completely finished with the purchase of the new property within 180 days. This includes your 45 days that you took to identify replacement properties. Okay, so in total, from day one, you've got 180 days to complete this process and purchase your new property. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it is. And again, our point here is not to get into the great details, because we're always going to hook you up with a 1031 exchange intermediary that's an expert in this. But we want you to just understand the strategies and that they're available for you to be able to have advantages and grow your portfolio, get into new markets, get into markets at the right time in the cycle to maximize your equity and really grow your wealth a lot faster, because you have access to strategies you didn't know about before.
And Jared, we had a question about the most common type of exchange. The most common type is a delayed exchange, and that's what we're outlining here. Where on day one, you sell your property, you complete the sale within 145 days from that point.
Right. And then Vance also asked if there was a link to the slide deck. We are going to be recording this. We're recording this, and so we will be able to send out a recording of this for you to watch. All right. So the next thing that we want to talk about strategically is self-directed IRAs. So let's talk a little bit about that. There are tax advantages and there are strategies to that. There's the home, somebody asked earlier where Adam and I were from. We're both grew up in the Atlanta area, and that's our beautiful city there. So let's talk about self-directed IRAs. This is a little bit of a mystical thing for some people that aren't as familiar with it, but it's really not complex at all. The main idea is it's very similar to your Roth. If you have a Roth, you can do a self-directed Roth IRA. If you have a traditional IRA, you can do a traditional route that's self-directed as well. The big difference is you're going to have more control over a self-directed IRA. If you're going into real estate, it's not as passive, obviously, as a regular IRA would be, but you have a lot more control. You can it's not quite as crazy as sometimes the stock market is, or the things that can change quickly within your regular IRA. There are some advantages to self-directed IRA, and there's some rules you need to follow. So let's talk about those.
Jared, it's important to point out, I think another reason why people use these, outside the fact that sometimes people feel more comfortable investing in real estate, is oftentimes if their stock portfolio or mutual fund portfolio is not, they're trying to hit a retirement goal and it's not where they want it to be. That is a passive investment, and ultimately you have someone else managing that. Real estate is not a passive investment. And again, there's risk in real estate like anything else, but oftentimes you can speed up the asset accumulation by, investing in something that requires a little bit more management effort on your part. And often, ends up with you allowing you to basically hit a retirement timeline that maybe you wouldn't have normally hit. And so it's one of the reasons that people do that.
And Adam, one thing I would say too, and you can explain this better than I can, because this is one of the areas you've passed me up on. Internal rate of return is something you can do with real estate that's not quite as easy to do with stocks. And my point on that is that if I have stocks, if I buy shares of Apple, it either goes up or it goes down, and I make profits based on it going up and selling at a higher value. I might get lucky and get some dividends. But the thing is with real estate, I have depreciation sometimes. I don't know how that works with self-directed IRAs, but one thing I do have is I have principal pay down. So that's paying down the loan every month. I don't get that with stocks. I don't have anybody who pays me back for the stock money I've invested every month, unless you wanted to call that dividends, I guess. But I really like that I've got the principal pay down. I've got the cash flow that comes in every month. So if I'm making maybe a 15% cash on cash return, I have money coming in annually, and monthly that ends up giving me money back. That's a good return. But then in addition to that, I've got appreciation. So if I made a 15% cash on cash return and a 7% appreciation, that's 21%, right there. And that doesn't even count the principal pay down. And so, potentially I think I can make a higher return in the real estate with more control over it. So I like that.
Yeah, it is. And that's a good point. I think one of the last two webinars that we had put together for you guys talked about some of the benefits from a cash flow standpoint of investing in real estate. There's something called a total return that we calculate that takes in all the consideration of investing in real estate versus investing in stocks or bonds. We call that a total return because it takes into consideration depreciation, appreciation, cash flow, and principal pay down. So that's something you might want to go back and take a look at that slide as well to see the full benefits.
And there's risks in real estate, just like there is in anything else that you decide to put money into. And certainly with a self-directed IRA, you're going to have to be more hands-on. You're going to have to be interviewing the property managers regularly, following up with them to make sure things are going smoothly. There is more that you have to take into consideration and make sure that you're willing to be a little bit more of an active investor. It's passive income from the standpoint that you're not going to work 8 to 10 hours a day to earn it, but that doesn't mean that it's completely hands-off.
That's right.
So the biggest thing with the self-directed IRA, you're going to have rules that relate to when you can pull the money out. And so that's where it's different from finance property with a VA loan or a FHA loan or a conventional loan or a US RDA loan. You're going to have rules as to when you can pull the cash flow out. You can't go and make $1,000 a month off of 3 properties and decide to go buy a boat and use the $1,000 a month from the 3 properties cash flow to pay your boat payment, because this $1,000 a month goes into your IRA and hopefully increases your IRA value. $12,000 a year is the goal. You're not going to live off of that money unless you've reached the rules that your IRA or your Roth would have had as to when you could pull those out, you can pull it out about the same time that you could have pulled out the money out of your IRA, your self-directed IRA, and any of the rules that would allow you to withdraw without having taxes or penalties are going to be very similar to your IRA. So high cash flow real estate is really ideal for a self-directed IRA. It's one of the things that you're allowed to invest in. And it kind of makes it to where you're protected from some of the ebb and flow of the stock market, but then you have risks like vacancy or a furnace blowing that you have to mitigate for. And that's part of the reason why I think the self-directed IRA makes you keep the cash flow in the Roth or in the self-directed IRA, is so that you're able to kind of self-insure against any of the some of the risks that are in real estate.
Well, Jared, the IRS gives us the tax benefits for this type of investing because they want us to prepare for retirement, right? They don't want us to rely on Social Security and rely on government benefits. So they give us tax breaks for preparing ahead and investing and saving for retirement. With a traditional IRA, you can't take that cash flow, that money out until after you're 59 and a half. And then if you have a Roth IRA, you're required to take it again after 59 and a half, but you have to take it before you turn 70 and a half. You have to start taking RMDs, which are required minimum distributions.
This is where Adam's securities and financial planning background really comes in handy. And Adam, isn't it true too that when you're looking at self-directed and Roth IRAs, there are some exemptions if you wanted to pull out for like a child's education or
there are
on a home?
That's right. First-time home buyer, education, or there's also a hardship. And some of those rules change on an annual basis. And again, you can talk to your CPA. Those rules change slightly every year. The amount of money you can invest in one changes as well. But there are ways that you can, for specific purposes, if you need to, that you can pull money out of your account early.
And we can move to the next slide on self-directed IRA. But one thing I would like to point out too is that when you're looking at self-directed IRAs, a lot of people have an old 401k, and when you leave a company that you were with before, that's an ideal time to roll over, because a lot of times you need to roll those over. You have a time requirement sometimes where you need to roll it over into an IRA or a Roth IRA, whichever the case may be. But sometimes your old 401ks can be rolled into self-directed IRAs. A lot of people don't know that.
That's right. That's right. Anytime you leave your job, it's not active, and you're actively investing in the 401k. And honestly, you talk to your financial planner, but we would actually encourage that. If you're working at a company and the company's matching or contributing to your 401k, that would be a great time to contribute to the 401k because there's a match. So ultimately, we use those when they're matching. And if they're not matching, and if you're not vested or there's no additional contribution, oftentimes there are a lot more investment options within a traditional Roth IRA. Traditionals are great. Roth IRAs are a little bit more powerful from a tax benefit standpoint. If you're for retirement, specifically for retirement, they're much more powerful actually.
Yeah, and talk to a financial planner and see, even if you have a traditional IRA, it might make sense, depending on where you are in your accumulation phase. Talk to your financial planner about whether it might make sense to convert it over to a Roth. You'd end up paying some taxes and you'd have some consequences, but the tax advantages on the back end, especially due to inflation and things like that, might be well worthwhile converting it to a Roth, depending on where you are. So get with a financial planner and make sure you get good advice when you're considering doing this. The only other thing I think we need to cover on self-directed IRA is that there are rules related to arm's length transactions. And I'm not going to delve into all of those right now, but it's just important to know that there are certain things you have to do to protect yourself. The transactions have to be arm's length. So for instance, if my wife has a self-directed IRA and she buys an investment property in it, I don't believe that I could go out and paint the house and have her pay me to paint the house. That would be a conflict and wouldn't be considered arm's length. One of the things that we have seen successfully is people can get with other friends that are non-related, and potentially you might sell one property to, if Adam and I wanted to, we could potentially, I could say, hey, Adam, I bought this house, I renovated it, I'm going to sell it to you for a $20,000 profit, potentially, and then Adam might buy a property from me. And so there are ways that you can work together to potentially grow by working with people who are arm's length to be able to do some things potentially as you hold real estate for a long time period if it meets each other's financial goals.
Jared, yeah, I think that's the end of the content that we wanted to cover tonight. We hope everyone's enjoyed it. We are going to have a little bit of time to answer some questions. So if you do have some questions, there's a chat box that you can answer those questions. We put some contact information here. You can hold your phone over the screen. There's a QR code. If you turn your phone to your camera, or if you have a QR reader and you hold it over the screen, a link will pop up and allow you to schedule a call. If you're interested in looking at some properties in the markets that we're in, Atlanta or Huntsville, or getting some inventory, schedule a call with Doyle. If you're interested in coaching, we've got a fantastic coaching program. Jared can give you some highlights on that. If you're interested in getting more coaching, schedule a contact with a call with Jared. If you want to discuss anything else other than those two things, you're welcome to schedule a call with me. These are our calendar links. You can get on our calendar for a call to have a discussion. Jared, did you want to say anything else about some of the coaching program?
Well, I would just say that we have an ability for you to be able to work with us. Usually it's a small group of 4 to 5 investors per week. We get together for 5 straight weeks for about 30 to 45 minutes per week. And we have about 52 videos on a huge amount of topics. It starts at the very beginning, goes through very advanced topics. We could cover market cycles and when to get in, when to get out of markets, how to identify markets that are good for investing, how to be able to decide whether you want to be in A, B, or C properties, how to evaluate neighborhoods on whether they're A, B, or C. We get into demographics and how to research and find all the information that you need, how to analyze properties and read pro formas, and how to interview property managers and to analyze construction and make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. There's just a whole lot. We get into 1031 exchange and self-directed IRA, just a lot of stuff, but it's really us helping you evaluate deals using the Housefolio software to be able to decide which deals are the best ones to pick up. So it's just a nice thing. It's available for you. We priced it at $499. When I was working with Rich Dad Poor Dad, people would charge $12,000 to be able to get access to us for this amount of time, and it wasn't near as thorough. And we just said, you know what? We don't care about making money on it. We spent about $70,000 developing it. But if somebody really wants to jumpstart their real estate investment career and get ahead quickly, it just gives you the ability to have more help.
And Jared, let me say one thing about that. Obviously, it's not about that money. That money really to us is a commitment from you that you're going to follow the guidance Jared's giving you. Ultimately, that's what we've, it's shown in the past, and studies have shown if people commit to something, they want to do something, and sometimes having something on the line, having money on the line really kind of encourages them and gives them extra motivation to go through and accomplish what they set out to accomplish. So that's really what that's all about.
Yeah. We actually lose money doing it at that price. It doesn't really, it's a lot of time commitment for me, but I just found that when I gave it away to my clients that were buying houses for free, they didn't do any of the work, and it is intensive.
Right.
There's a lot to learn and there's a lot to study, but
to get the most out of it, you have to do the work.
That's right.
And again, anytime, I hope everybody's enjoyed this. If you have any questions, there's a chat box, a Q&A box that we'd be glad to answer some questions for you. And if you don't have any questions, we'll hang out here for just a couple minutes. Then we appreciate you spending this time with us. And we appreciate you listening to what we have to say. And we hope it's been valuable for you. And we've had many years experience in real estate. We've had great careers in real estate. We've loved every minute of it. Even the minutes that we hated, we love those too.
One thing I would add too, Adam, that's kind of cool. Adam's up with Tim Horvath right now. They're up in Charlotte, North Carolina, looking to expand more markets for you guys. So right now we have Atlanta and Columbus and Macon, Georgia. We've also got Huntsville, Birmingham, and Montgomery in Alabama. And now we've got Charlotte coming down the pipeline real soon. So good things there.
Jared, we did have one question is Eddie had asked if we advise investing in manufactured homes as rental property. I'll give my answer and then you can throw yours out there, but I would really just encourage people to invest in something they're familiar with. And manufactured homes, there can be a great cash flowing opportunity, That's not my favorite opportunity. The ones that we focus on in my portfolio are properties that cash flow and properties that, have a tendency to appreciate and grow, net worth. But they're for a lot of people have, I think, done well with manufactured homes. Jerry, what are your thoughts on that?
They're harder to finance. They don't appreciate very well. They get torn up faster, but they are cheap to maintain. I mean, fixing them is a lot cheaper sometimes than standard homes. I tend to like them better if they're on a permanent foundation than if they're just, have tie downs. But if they're on a permanent foundation, I would say I'm willing to invest in mobile homes when pretty much manufactured homes when nothing else is available. And so an example would be like in Atlanta, a couple years ago, what you're really buying is a land deal here. I thought mobile homes made really good sense in Atlanta 4 or 5 years ago, that I could still get some stuff for, $35,000, $40,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath double wide that was on a permanent foundation on 1.25 acres. And if it was in a good growth area in the path of growth, and I knew that I could rent the house out and it would cover itself and make me some nice cash flow for 5 or 7 years, and the area around it was gentrifying, and then I could yank the mobile home off of it and build a house, and they gave me a very viable piece of property. That's where I like mobile homes. So I think you really know what you're doing, and you do the research, and you make sure that you can get financing, and you've got permanent foundations. They can be a strategy that work for some people.
And Jared, that's really the only time that I've looked at them in the past. I looked at mobile homes as the cheapest way to buy land that is cash flowing. And so ultimately, if there's a land play there, I would definitely look at it. If I feel like there's some value in that land now or in the future, that would be something that would be attractive to me. We also have another question about what kind of advice would you give someone that really doesn't have a lot of capital for down payment, that want to get their first investment property. So what I would consider, you have to think, again, real estate's not liquid, and you just have to think even from an investment standpoint. The first question I would ask that person is, if they've purchased their own home before. That's a consideration, buying because oftentimes it's, have less, you can put less money down to get your own home. That would be one way to do it. Another way, we're not going to go into tax liens and stuff, but obviously that's got lower barrier of entry. That's one way to invest. But the biggest thing, if someone wants to put a lot of time and energy in learning how to invest and scouting properties and going through all that effort, there are a lot of people that do have money to invest, but they don't want to do that work. So if you're willing to partner with someone and scout out a property and do the work, or you're willing to put in sweat equity, there are other people that want to invest. And if they believe in you and what you've been able to do, that is a way to get started.
And they'll partner with you 50-50 a lot of the times, but you have to become an expert. If you can't portray yourself as an expert to where they feel like you're bringing significant value, meaning a property with lots of equity, a property with huge cash flow, a property that's way in a different market that they didn't know about, where you know all the demographics, you can tell them about the employment, you can tell them about the population growth, who the major employers are, and you can give them examples of deals. If you can show that you really have a lot of expertise that you're bringing to the table, they'll put up the money and partner with you 50-50 and even finance it. The other thing is, and Adam was smart with saying, hey, you can let them bring the money. But the other thing is, could you bring the credit? If you don't have a lot of down payment money, could you bring the credit and go to somebody who has the money and say, hey, let's partner. I'll put up the credit if you'll put up the money.
Yeah, Jared, another question is I did mention for a second investment property, is there a way to put less than 25% down? He was able to put 20% down on his first property. There is a way, and you can get properties with 20% down, yes. Oftentimes the interest rate might be a little bit different. The more you put down, it reduces the risk for the lender and gives them, allows them to give you a lower interest rate. So, but you can put 20% down. Honestly, in some cases we've put less than 20% down. In some cases we put 15% down, especially if we're renovating a property and flipping it and the value is much higher. We put there are some cases when you can put very little money down on a property, especially if it's a flip. Is that, Jared, any thoughts there about first 25% or?
No, I think that's really good. I think you covered that pretty well. I mean, again, I think the only thing I would say is make sure that you've reached out and that if you have money, if you've run out of down payment money yourself, do you have a self-directed IRA? Are there other resources? Could you cash out, refinance your house? And to the anonymous person that asked about if you didn't have a lot of down payment money, well, do you have a paid off car that you can get a title loan for a down payment? Are there other avenues? When I was in college, I don't know if you can do this today. I don't know if you should do this, but I even got a student loan and used student loan money to put a down payment on a house. I took a car title loan and put a down payment on another house. Oh, cool. Eddie says he loves the House Folios app. Thanks for the kudos there, Eddie. We're glad you're enjoying that. It's really been life-changing for Adam and I. We used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and manually put stuff into spreadsheets and analyze.
Oh, Jared, don't remind me.
That was awful.
Don't remind me. I remember those days all too well.
Yep.
Thank you. We do appreciate that. And I think that was the last question.
Adam, you might want to give a link to the House Folios where these guys can get a trial for the software.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to Housefolios, it's housefolios.com. You go to housefolios.com. You can do a trial and get to know our software. This is our first iteration. There's a lot more that we're going to develop. And again, as we get enough subscriptions for this one and continue to raise capital, then we can continue to build out the rest of the application and make it better and better. So this is really where we're just getting started.
All right. Well, again, I really enjoyed spending time with you, Adam, as always. I guess I'll see your family Sunday. That's
right.
Else, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful evening.